Peter, I mean, when you apparently you really enjoyed doing this, but it was really the first time that you did a large painting or a wall painting like this.
I'd made some big paintings in my studio on my own. For Westminster Cathedral for a concert. A pianist called Stephen Hoff asked me if I would collaborate, and I made a very tall painting on my own with the help of a friend, just to sort of move things around. But this is the first time I've done a kind of painting with a group. Oh, actually not true, because we did a version of this in a nightclub in New York, which is where Sam saw it. And it was a very different experience. It was a dark basement club, and the idea was to sort of create a sort of sense of illusion and illuminate this space, which is normally black. And I worked with a group of young artists there, but we did that in 2 days. It was done very quickly because you couldn't really see it properly. It was in the dark. This was very different because we knew it'd be seen in daylight and under a little bit more scrutiny.
But you would say that it was part of your of the teaching course, or was it?
Hardly that. I mean, I wondered who'd want to sort of partake, to be honest, because you're making someone else's painting. But one of the reasons I chose this motif was I actually felt that it gave each person an opportunity to sort of be expressive in their own little way, because of all these blocks, all these miniature paintings within a big painting. And also it dealt with very simple ideas about sort of, as I said, illusionism and space and quite traditional things. It was a kind of a play, really, a play on making a painting. One student painted pretty much the whole 5 days, just the bottom part, with a big brush in each hand, and he just methodically sort of painted the bottom, which is probably the most difficult part to paint. I mean, afterwards people added bits to the bottom, but I mean, that was quite a task. And then another student painted the sky, I think, 4 times, which looks maybe easier than it was, because he was on a trolley, sort of going back and forth, and he had to try and keep it consistent. It wasn't just one, he was mixing paint as he painted, so it was a little bit more complicated than it may look. But it was, all in all, it was a really great experience. It was, no one got into any fights, or no blood was spilt. But I think, from my own point of view, I think it was a very enjoyable, and I think probably a good thing, because I felt I could actually relax whilst making a painting, which I don't really have that experience when I make my own paintings, really, so much. It's more, I don't know, this was just the joy of making a painting with a group of people and sort of not feeling precious about it.
How is it for you to now see paintings over 25 years? Do you remember the emotions that you had and the moments, and how is that being confronted with the ghosts of your past?
Yeah, it's strange making a show like this, because your dream would be to make a show all of brand new paintings of the same size as this, but sadly, it's the way I work. It's not really possible. So it is looking at things that I've probably looked at a few too many times, I feel, but there's some, quite a few surprises and obviously memories about, when and where they were made, under what circumstances, just what's going on in between two paintings. Like there's some paintings upstairs that were made 25 years apart, and they're hanging side by side, and in many ways the intention is the same. And I'd never have imagined that. It's quite the same. But yeah, so it's interesting. It's a privilege, real privilege, to have paintings in a space like this, I have to say, as an artist, in the company that's beyond the walls, beyond the walls or just behind the walls. But it's also just such a fantastic opportunity to see your own work, and I mean it's a good thing.
I think the earliest work in the show is Milky Way, yeah.
Yes.
And it's interesting how that still relates to many of the other things. Was that something when you started that you felt already, you saw that many things could come out of it, or how?
I think I was always trying to paint, even prior to that, I was always trying to create atmosphere and sensation and, something that resembled a feeling of being in a space. And prior to that, I think I was making paintings that were more about maybe sort of urban situations, feelings of being out at night or in a city or on a street or, trying to capture maybe a sense of sort of wonderment, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, melancholy or not. With that painting, I was thinking about scale in paintings. I think that prior to that, I hadn't really thought about scale too much in a painting. Like not so much how big a painting is, because it's not a very big painting, but how can you create a feeling of space in a painting? And so, yes, it uses devices. I think that all paintings sort of operate with devices. The device, that one being, the reflection, which kind of opens the whole thing up, bigger than what it seems. And then also just using small things and big things. I was also thinking of a city sort of in the distance illuminating nature. And, ideas of artifice and just invention, really. Like a painting is just pure invention. It's just an illusion, really. So it sounds like it was an experiment. I don't think it was an experiment, but it was. I think it did those things for me, and then I think it's possibly things I've worked on since, maybe not consciously, but.
Mm-hmm. And there's already the form of the canoe, and it's something.
Yeah, the canoe was. I mean, when the swamp painting came up there, I realized why I liked that shape so much. It wasn't so much to do with the canoe; it was to do with the kind of the shape of the body in it. And I think it was a very sort of somehow, even though it's a strange, this craft, a floating craft, it also had a very sort of human feel to it, really. And I think a canoe is something. Well, actually, Ulf was with me in London, and he mentions it in his text, but. The building next to my studio is the store of the British Museum ethnographic department. And right behind the wall of my studio, unbeknownst to me, is where they store all their canoes. And the canoes, not just, I mean, actually, I don't even really recall seeing a canoe like that, but canoes from all over the world, all, from ancient times, from Africa, from Polynesia, from everywhere you can imagine. Inuit canoes. And the one thing they have in common is this very, very sort of close relationship to the water. Mm. I mean, there's nothing really in between you and the water, and floating close to the water, and it must be a very primal. It's a very primal invention, really, to be able to sort of float on water and not to carry much more than your own body, your own body weight. And I don't know. Going back to the canoe that I painted first, I think it was really this feeling of this floating, like a floating body, really, rather than anything else. Yeah.
Were there other paintings that you felt, that there was something new coming into your paintings, or which felt like a turning point?
Well, I mean, I think there's. For instance, when I started painting snow paintings, I felt that there wasn't enough snow in painting. Snow. No, there was. Who's painting? I mean, maybe in Switzerland there's more snow painters than there are elsewhere, but even in North America, there are not so many painters who've made paintings using snow, and so I started looking at quite excitedly trying to find paintings by painters of snow, and one of the first ones I came across was the one in Winterthur, the Bruegel of the Adoration of the Kings, and there are more paintings with snow in them, but there's not so many paintings with snow falling. And so I had this idea of making paintings with snow falling, which was obviously very sort of, dangerously sort of kitsch in a way, or dangerously sort of sentimental because of all the associations one has with that image and the way it's been used in film. It's often used as a way to sort of suggest sort of looking back or better times or things like that. But I just got quite excited by this creating these screens and these looking through and these kind of devices, almost like in an abstract way, really, as a way of making, breaking up the whole picture plane with this stuff which is just paint, but somehow could be something natural. So I think that was one thing.
But you wouldn't really mind that people say, this is the perfect melancholic painting, or this is melancholy, or this loneliness. What you want to show? I mean, you wouldn't mind slightly sentimental feelings, would you?
Not really, because I think that paintings means different paintings mean so many different things for each person, depending on their own experience. I think that you can't really control how people are affected by them. I think that's the way it should be.
For me, it's often that they really are like make you addicted to seeing. They draw you in, and you almost get lost in them. How do you explain that effect? How does it happen to you?
I don't know, because I don't know if that's the same for everyone. I think that I don't know. Maybe when you make a painting, there's so many decisions, and when a painting's that's the difficult thing, is when's a painting completed? When's a painting ready? And I don't know what causes this.
Yeah. When do you know it's ready?
When you don't feel sick in the stomach looking at it. Yeah.
Do the prints? I mean, you once said that the prints sort of helps you to feel when a painting is ready, because the printmaking is in a way perhaps more decisive, or am I wrong?
Printmaking is etching I'm talking about, is very interesting medium for a painter, because it's almost like it's almost happen much quicker, and it's a very similar process of layering, and I don't know, it's probably maybe boring for the non printmaker, but you get sort of caught up in the nuances of it, and the sort of, you sort of fetishize little sort of things that happen, the minutiae of making a print. But that's also, I think, what's needed in the making of a painting. If there's no sort of nuance for the artist, then there can't be any sort of I don't know what nuance, but there can't be any sort of anything similar for the viewer, I don't think, really. So I think that the nuance could be a gesture, an aggressive gesture, or it can be something. Doesn't have to be something subtle, but it's got a bit. It's what makes. It's why when you go and look at that Courbet, Bonjour, Monsieur Courbet, there's so many elements you can get drawn into. You ask yourself why he painted that little wagon, and how much fun he must have had painting that wagon. Was it a joke, or was it actually, is there, you might know, or the way he painted his, the angle of his beard, all those little things. I mean, all those, every single thing in the painting is important.
What about the white spot on the chest of the ping pong player?
Oh, that was just like a glint of like a kind of medallion he had on. Yeah.
Maybe that leads us to your archive of picture. How do you collect them, and how do you make use of them in your paintings?
I mean, it's just a collection of pictures. I mean, before the days of computers, it would be in a shoebox or maybe in a bigger box, and just cuttings and photographs and things that one uses to make a painting. I mean, I try and keep the things I use to make a painting because, you know, you never know when you may want to use it again. But that's part of the craft. That's part of the design element of making a painting. You know, just, I mean, I find it fascinating looking at other artists' source material. I mean, there was a great exhibition, for instance, of Rousseau in London fairly recently, and they showed a lot of his source material for the first time. And that was really interesting to see, you know, from you know, all those years ago. He was, in a way, doing similar things to what artists do now. Composing paintings out of composites. And
If you're composing a painting, how many composites can you have? How many elements? Up to how many can be in that?
Could be quite a lot. Could be fairly minimal. I mean, there's very few that come straight out of my head. I mean, this painting, for instance, there was just two elements. There was two photographs. One was of the island, and one was of a wall that I saw. But the wall was really only just I was just interested in the way this kind of wall had been painted in these sort of strange colors, really. And there was certain bits of graffiti on it that kind of interested me. But the island interested me. The painting I call it Cat of Nine Tails, which was I don't know if you know, but the Cat of Nine Tails was a whip they used to use to beat prisoners or whoever. And this island in the painting is called Curator, and there's a prison on it. And they used to beat the men there with the cat of nine tails. They're particularly bad, or whatever. And there's a famous calypso by Lord Invader called The Old Cat of Nine. And it's about, it makes mention of the island of Carrera and the Cat of Nine Tails. And he actually wrote a calypso in London years later, recommended that they use the Cat of Nine Tails on the Teddy Boys, who were the causing havoc in England in the 1950s.
How does it, like you move quite a bit around in your life. How are the different places that you lived in? How do they affect your work immediately or later or not at all?
Sometimes later. I mean, I think I've spent the most time in London, and although I find London a really good place to paint, and I enjoyed very much the sort of tradition of painters there. And you feel, even if you're living a very private life, which I think is very possible there, and not having anyone come to your studio and working pretty much in isolation, you still feel you're kind of connected to a bigger group of artists. And I suppose because I studied in London, I really felt that in London. I felt it was a really good place to work. There's actually a really great essay by Lawrence Gowing, the British artist and art historian, about in a catalogue for Francis Bacon. And he talks about, the beginning of the essay is about him worrying as another artist about what's coming down the stairs out of Francis Bacon's studio. Just this sort of sense that, you have this, you think about other artists, you think about what they're doing, even if you don't really see it. And I thought it was a really great way of sort of talking about the excitement of working in a place where other painters are working. Trinidad is, you know, there are a lot of artists who live in Trinidad. I mean, local Trinidadian artists, and there's very much a Trinidadian art scene that, for whatever reasons, doesn't travel much. So I feel maybe I've, you know, freedom in a way to work there that I don't in London. But I have to say that I do miss what I described from the London experience.
So, just a question. I mean, what I think is really interesting is that your work really changes a lot. I mean, you see real Peter Doigs all the time, of course, but it changes in a way that the color changes. So, what would you think? Do you have a feeling how this journey will continue, or because your latest paintings are very sort of dark, very sort of very bright in a way, very intense, more colorful. Is this?
Yeah, I mean, I can't really think about what might happen, and that's also what's quite daunting about doing an exhibition like this, because you know you're looking back over 20 years, and then you have this kind of void in front of you, this blank, like the blank canvas, like, you know, the blank canvas in front of you in your studio. What will you make in the next 20 years? It's not as if there's a plan. There never was a plan. But I mean, that's the kind of terrifying thing about. I'm not talking about, you know, living up to any expectations other than your own, because I mean, it's at the end of the day, you know. Paintings get owned by people. You can't possibly house your own paintings anyway. Really, I mean, what would you do with them? But you know, there's a thrill in making them. Really, there's a sort of there's a thrill of you know, in a way, making a painting that's sort of that you feel is ready to leave the studio. And that's I think that's what you kind of live for as a painter, musician, artist, whatever.
How can we imagine you work in the studio? How are you? Is the process of painting going?
Pretty I'd say quite sort of haphazard, really. It's kind of it's not really. It doesn't look like doesn't look like an office. It doesn't look like a factory. It's very. It could just be look like the corner of a room where someone's sort of set up. It's not very not professional. But
do you have
I find
any
that
routines in working it? Or?
Not really. I think that the best things have come about for me out of sort of a haphazard situation, in a sense, where, you know, you have to have been painting to make paintings, and I don't mean just, you know, have your hand in but I'm talking about, you know, there has to be a lot of material around, and there has to be, because you know, the most sort of what's the word? The most bland thing in the world is looking at paints in an art shop, you know, in tubes like this. You know, it just doesn't mean anything. It's just like it's completely anemic. You can go and buy the most expensive paints in the world and lay them out on a table. It doesn't mean a thing. But until they're sort of like kind of mixed and in sort of in use in pots, and like, you know, you see one color mix with another one next to the other one, then you know, that's how you get ideas for. That's how you get ideas for color. You get not just color, but like ideas for consistency of paint and things like that. Boring sort of things like that help you actually. I mean, I think maybe in the old days you'd get up in the morning, you'd mix you'd spread the paint on your palette, and then you'd mix it, then you'd sort of clean it at the end of the day. But it's not really like that.
And influences like music, does it play? I mean, we installed music here for
That was mainly the students playing the music, but no, I mean, I think pretty much every artist listens to music. It's sort of, yeah.
Maybe we should open up. Maybe you have some question to the artist. Vielleicht hat jemand von Ihnen eine Frage an den Künstler.
Well, that seems to be an obvious fascination, your paintings for water. And I was just wondering, where does this come from? So that water plays a major role in your paintings.
I'm trying to think of the first painting I made with water. I suppose in the early 90s, yeah. I think it came about as a sort of way of wanting to try and paint space and then reflected space. I don't think it was ever really about water or the sensation of water. I don't think any of the paintings particularly looked like water. I mean, maybe, I don't know. Even this doesn't really look like water. It's not like...
It's more kind of medium for mirroring things.
Yeah, and also, yeah, a way to paint, a way to extend the painting, really.
Peter, what do you think about the description of your work of magic reality or magic realism? What do you think about it, about the description?
Is this, who said that? Oh, you read it, yeah. Yes. I don't know. It's not something I would say. It sounds a bit sort of Disney-like. That's magic realism. But I don't know. I don't know who else would be in that category. That'd be the question. then I would know whether I.
Is reality magic?
Well, I mean, when you walk through in here, like in the morning, when you come to at this time of year, and you look up, onto that hill, and you look through these trees and stuff like that, it's pretty magic. I guess it's a construction, but it's quite magic. I mean, the building's quite magic. I don't know. I mean, I think you can look. There's all sorts of sides of it, really, aren't there? It depends where you look.
Women are magic too.
Good. Yeah.
Please. This is a site-specific work here, but it's removable. It looks like. I have something to ask you about this work because it's a site-specific work. It was made here, but it's removable because it's made of pieces. So what will be the future of this work? Where will it be located? Have you already cogitated about that, or?
Have you got a big wall?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. Could bend it around the corner. I don't know. We could try it. I have no idea, to be honest. Yeah, that was not really the point. The point was to sort of make it and have it for the exhibition. I suppose the amount of effort that went into it and the amount of material. It would have been a waste of paint just to sort of paint it white. And also, actually, we use these kind of strange mediums, so they would have had to have completely eradicated the wall probably to get it flat again. So I don't know what's going to happen to it.
I think it would break anyone's heart to destroy a painting like that. So, you had a question.
I like your social aspect of painting it with the students in a group. And as Mr. Keller said, you move a lot. Can you take your family along when you go to New York or when you stay in Trinidad for work and then you come back to London? Or do you go all alone and do you have a little flat in Trinidad and you disappear?
It's a very personal question.
Yes, it's a very personal question.
I have a big suitcase, No, sometimes, depends. This is a bit
It is delicate. I mean, yeah, it's how to live such a moved life and to switch homes like that. Is it difficult for you to integrate that with your work and all that?
It's work somehow.